Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have Zac Jacobson. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We were just talking before we started here about you just moved into, is this your first house that you've bought as an adult?
I bought one house before this, and then I moved into my wife's house. So this is kind of like our third.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of houses and not that big of a time period, I guess.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so how's the new digs? You were talking about the fact that you found some newspapers in the attic and stuff like that from the 30s because it's your wife's grandparents' house?
Yeah, so we bought my wife's grandparents' house here in Hales Corners, so we've been renovating it slowly but surely. And my parents were up from Florida probably about a year ago. And my mom was in charge of cleaning the basement. I don't know why, but...
Get down there, Mom.
Yeah. It was an easy job for her. So she ended up finding like this stack of newspapers like in the rafters. And they're from like the 30s and 40s. And they have like all these amazing illustrations in them. So I've just been slowly scanning in a bunch of like cool typography and illustrations that kind of inspired me. So it's been cool.
What are some of the illustrations that are on there, or what are the subject?
A lot of it is about dentures, so like a lot of fake teeth and like It's hilarious.
Yeah, growing up just as a kid, were you very much into the arts world? I read you were into skateboarding as well, but were you drawing in that art world as well?
I think as a kid I was like super focused on just being outside all the time.
Yeah.
I grew up in Manitowoc, about an hour and a half north of here. And our neighborhood was like a block away from the beach, or like a block away from the bluff that overlooked the beach. Like our neighborhood was just infested with kids my age. So we just always were doing stuff outside. You know, in the winter, like obviously you have more time inside to like draw and paint and stuff like that. But I always doodled. In the 90s, I was obsessed with drawing that famous S shape.
Yeah, I just saw a post about that actually not too long ago.
Yeah, those and aliens and yin yangs. Yeah, but I guess as a kid, I was more, I think this is where my design sense comes in. But as a kid, I was like super detail oriented. When I would get a grass stain on my jeans, I would like go inside and change.
Sure. Yeah, you got to.
I think that's where my design sense of like being detail oriented like has come from.
It's funny that you bring that stuff up, like the S and things, because I was just thinking about the other day. Did you ever do this where you drew, I think it was with crayons, and then you drew over with like a black crayon, and then you like scraped away the black, and there was like this multicolored letter?
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I just remembered that just when you were talking about it. So
wow, that brings back some memories.
Yeah, I don't even really know how it worked because they were both crayons, but
yeah, it must have been like some different like chemical reaction or something. I don't know.
So growing up when you were in high school and stuff, what were you interested in? What did you want to do like career wise, or go to college and major in?
High school, I was very confused, as probably a lot of people are and were.
Yeah.
I was very inspired with like my dad's work ethic. Like he was a carpenter and he did a lot of like side jobs that I would kind of tag along with. And so I was like, you know, maybe I can do something that's kind of artistic and still kind of like work with my dad. And his idea was like, why don't you go to school for like architecture, draw, you know, buildings and stuff.
Right.
That was kind of like the plan until like my junior year in high school. I took a multimedia class, which was like the old iMac G3s.
Sure, the big ones.
Making like iMovies, DVDs on those, and I would make like skate videos and then like design the DVD cover. So I was like really obsessed with that class. Like I loved it. And I was like, I didn't even like think to put into perspective, like what if this was like a career kind of thing? I just thought of it as like, oh, this is really fun. I love doing this as a hobby.
Yeah.
But that year, a recruiter from MyEd came into our class and was basically like, you can do this as a career and like get paid for this. And I'm like,
you're like, what?
Yeah, mind blowing. So from that point on, like I knew I wanted to go to MyEd. There were a couple bumps in the road getting there because right before my senior year, my parents decided to move all the way down to Florida. and take me with, and my sister. So I had like issues with, tuition, like being in state, and never realized that Maya was just, a private school. So it didn't matter if I was
Sure.
or not. I ended up getting a scholarship through my dad's company that nobody knew about. I was literally the only person that applied for it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. So I went to FGCU down in Florida for a couple of years. Just did basic courses, and
That's like, it feels like a common theme, because I've talked to more than one artist that they pursued or were told to pursue architecture for a while before they actually got into like graphic design and illustration and stuff.
yeah, I never actually like did anything with architecture. I never like did any research, didn't even like attempt to draw any buildings. I just like
Sure.
knew like that's what's going to come after school. So
Yeah, because it seems like one of the only practical applications when you're young, because as you said, until Maya came in, you didn't know that this was a career, and not a lot of people do. There's so many careers that growing up we don't know about. And so yeah, I think just coming from parents, it's like, well, they're good at drawing, this is practical for them.
yeah,
For sure.
this will make you money.
Yeah, definitely. You actually got to go back, did you not, to be like a lecturer at MyEd or teach at MyEd? Is that right?
I teach for a semester. It was right as I was starting my own business with some partners, and I never went out on my own before, so I was kind of nervous. And I was like, I just need to try to make as much money as possible. So I'm going to do this instructor thing at Maya just to have as a backup. Like if I can't find any like freelance work, or this side business or this business isn't going to, float itself, like I'll just have that to back up on. So
Right.
I did that. It was the same semester that my old instructor for that same class was retiring. So he was giving me like his syllabus, his kind of notes and all that stuff, which was kind of weird because it was the same exact syllabus as what I had.
Didn't change at all.
10 years ago. So he's like, yeah, you can just change it up. You can do whatever you want. You can just, you can use this as your syllabus. Do whatever you want. So
yeah, was that weird to go back to a school and teach where you were taught? Like, was it a weird perspective flip?
It was very weird. Like I had a lot of confidence going into it, and after the first class, I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah, I feel like that would be such a weird thing for me to go back to my school that I graduated from and teach a course or something. I don't know. I feel like I'm not old. It's like all my professors were very not old, but they were at least my parents' age. So I feel like if I went back at like 29, I was like, "Hey kids, learn some stuff."
Who's this schmuck?
I wasn't that far removed from that long ago. So that's interesting though. Did you like teaching? Did you like that aspect of it?
I honestly give a lot of respect to people that enjoy teaching. I think I was kind of in a different mindset of, when I started teaching, it was right around the time where like all this work was coming in. So I was extremely busy. So I feel like I didn't have like the capacity of like giving it my all. It was a good experience, I think, for me as a creative, just to like, talk about work and like show these students like what works, what doesn't, why we do this, why we do that. It was interesting to like go back to the roots, and when you're in a creative mindset for so long, you kind of forget like where you started and how you were thinking when you were that young. It was kind of like refreshing to like go back.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I feel like it also gives you like a different just headspace to look at your work, because I feel like a lot of the time I'm like a video editor and producer, and I feel like you get into projects so much and you sort of sometimes are doing similar things that when you go back and sort of look at it from a student's perspective, maybe they even catch something that you didn't even see,
Yeah, I mean, there were a few times where I was learning from them just as much as they were learning from me. So that was kind of the cool moments that I was having there. So
because when I was looking you up and reading about you, it said you were really into skateboarders, the Ed Templeton, and I think it's Chris Markovic. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I always I grew up reading the names versus like hearing the names. So.
Sure. I think that's right.
Yeah.
What did you really like about those skateboarders? Because they're both artists and skateboarders. How did they influence you in your career choices in life?
I was very passionate about skateboarding as a kid, and I almost got the skate or die tattoo.
Really? So where are we going to get it?
I think it was going to be like on my forearm somewhere.
Okay.
Near the elbow.
Prominent, yeah.
Yeah. But I think what I was like really intrigued about with their work and like who they were as people was like skateboarding wasn't the one thing that defined them. Mm-hmm. And I knew I was good at skateboarding. I knew it wasn't like super great. So it's like I want to have like another thing that kind of like helps define me, and like it's also another mode of expression. Like, you know, skateboarding is very like physical, and you can take out my like anger and sadness and like all those negative emotions in skateboarding, and then like with artwork you can just like chill out and meditate on drawing lines or coloring stuff. So
there's something freeing about sort of seeing those people from a young age that aren't just like pigeonholed into one thing and are just, regardless of what people say, are just doing what they love to do.
Yeah. And it also seemed like another outlet of like, just seemed like there were more roads open for some of those skateboarders. Mm-hmm. You know, I also thought it was really cool that they were designing their own skateboards and their own ads and stuff like that. And that's kind of what like made me think about what if this could be a career, you know?
Yeah. Were you doing that as a kid, like designing skate decks and stuff like that? I know that was a super popular thing to do.
I would take my old decks and like paint on them.
Okay.
I was really into like acrylics and painting, and once I decided to go to MyAd, I had to build up like a portfolio. So I just painted like crazy leading up to that. I was like painting on wood, like scraps of wood that my dad had out in the garage, and old skate decks and broken skate decks. And
do you still have that stuff? Because I feel like that would be really cool to see.
I know. I think I might have like photos of all that stuff, like that my mom might have, but I definitely need to find that stuff.
That's like some really cool art exhibition pieces, like broken skateboards with painting like on them. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, and I always want to like go back and see what that stuff looked like to compare it to my work now.
Because how has your stuff evolved from that point? Has the subject matter evolved for you too? Like what you're interested in, inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, back then I was creating some really weird stuff that had like weird patterns, and I always love the idea of like combining like two or more things that don't make sense, you know?
Sure.
It's like playing with the imagination that way, and it becomes like this cool art piece. I think that's what I was inspired by with like Jeremy Fish. Like he always took like two or more forms and like combined them. I was like, I feel like my mind is connecting with your mind. Like that like looks very familiar to me for some reason, you know? So
sure.
Yeah, I need to find that work.
What were some of the unfamiliar things that you were putting together? Like what were some of those things?
A hand as like a plant, or like wings coming out of something. I don't know. Like
sure.
Playing around with, you know, human elements and objects and combining them. So
I read that up to a couple of years ago, you didn't feel like didn't think that you had a style. So how do you think your specific style evolved? Like, what do you think pushed you? Because when I look at your work, I'm like, I know that, you know, like it makes sense. It's all, some of it's different, but it's all cohesive somehow. So what do you think, where do you think that came from and how it evolved to this point?
It's crazy. I sat down with a friend of mine for a couple of beers a couple of years ago, and not to name drop or anything, but Brett Stenson is the guy. And
he lives in Portland, right?
Yeah. So he went to my ed too. So we have this like connection of meeting up for some beers or talking virtually about art and stuff. And I was talking to him about this, and he's like, "Oh, dude, you definitely have a style." I'm like, "I don't feel like I do." He's like, "You gotta like let it come naturally. Like your style is who you are. Like your experiences and everything like make your style what it is. Like you can't just like come up with a style and like that's your thing. Like
yeah,
most of your experiences is they're gonna form that style of yours." So it was kind of nice to like hear that and like take a step back and be like, oh, okay, so I should just embrace my weird and embrace my characteristics that like make me me, you know. So
what do you think those are? Like, what do you think your style is if you had to like sort of encapsulate it?
I guess I've always been intrigued by, you know, growing up with skateboarding. Like a lot of artists kind of had this sense of not caring very much or taking art too seriously.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of like me doing things a little bit gritty or like by hand to just embrace some of that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like being so detail oriented, like I feel like there's this juxtaposition of wanting to make things perfect too.
Sure.
So there's like this tug of war between the two kind of aesthetics. No. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
I don't think I could define it either. So, but I really like it. I love it. I love what your work is and what you do. I think it's really amazing. Even things like, I think a while back you did a piece that you posted on Instagram of Aaron Jones, right?
Yeah.
Even that was just like, it was so, because it's sort of what you're saying is so detailed, but yeah, there is some of that. I don't know how to put it. Yeah. It's just as cool.
It's like organic stuff mixed with clean stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You can put that on your website on the top. As your tagline.
The verbiage there, but yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. You work for Harley right now, right?
Yeah.
Harley Davidson. A couple of years ago, did you get a motorcycle? Is that right? Or a year ago?
Oh man, I think that was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Did that sort of make you want to get into more of that realm once you got a motorcycle?
So that kind of stemmed from my internship at Harley Davidson about 10 or 11 years ago.
Mm.
I was only supposed to be there for 6 months and I got hired on for another 6.
Sure.
And I went into it like, you know, with my Toms and my tight jeans and like I didn't care about motorcycles. I was like, well, this is just a big brand. Like I'm going to get a lot of great experience.
Right. Yeah.
Like throughout that internship, it just started growing on me and I was like, I think I want a motorcycle.
I think I like this now.
Yeah. So they had motorcycles like in the hallways. And every time I would go to the bathroom, there was this Sportster right next to the men's bathroom. And it was the bike that I thought was like the coolest bike that they had out at that moment.
Mm.
And I would just stare at it sometimes and like, okay, I got to get back to work. And that ended up being the bike that I bought a number of years later. There was a guy up in Manitowoc who posted on Facebook Market. He was selling his bike for like $5,500 and he still owed $6,500 on it. He apparently was having a 3rd or 4th child and he needed to buy a minivan. So
okay, sure.
I swooped in and took it back.
Yeah, because that's something that I've always wanted to do, just like get my motorcycle license and get a motorcycle. Because I just feel like you get such a different perspective driving around on a motorcycle than you do in a car.
Absolutely. Know? Yeah. I mean, when you're in a car, you kind of feel like you're invincible. Like you can program.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you can just like rip around and not get hurt. But when you're on a motorcycle and you're pissed, you're like, okay, this is like a good practice of patience. Like I need to like be good about my driving. Otherwise I'm going to crash and die.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's kind of like anger management in a way.
Everybody needs to get one before they drive a car. Yeah, because that's true. You know, you see the people that are in cars and they're like getting all pissed off, flicking people off and like driving through, speeding through stop signs and stuff, all pissed. But yeah, you can't do that on a motorcycle because you will die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that helps you creatively, like on a motorcycle and driving around? Do you get inspired by things?
The thing for me with riding is like releasing stress and like coming back with a reset mind. And it's so crazy like how your attitude changes from just 1 second, you know, you're bogged down with work and you take a ride and you come back and it's like, man, I needed that. That was like just a complete reset in my brain. So yeah, there's a lot of like thinking going on when I'm riding. Like usually I go like out in the country. So there's not like a whole lot that like I can see and point to that like inspires me, but you know, it's just more of like a Zen thing for me, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you do something that you love to do for a job and for money, but you also do it outside of that, I'm assuming, still as well, and for fun. So how do you balance that? How do you balance working 8 hours, doing the same thing that you're going to be doing for fun, maybe later on if you want to do that? Because I have trouble doing that as a person that does video work, where I'm working 8 hours editing a video and I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do now. Like I'm done for the day. How do you like balance that for yourself?
Man, I'm still struggling with that. Like, I think, I've lost relationships in the past because of me like working too much. And
sure,
I think over time I've learned kind of like how to manage my time a little bit better. But that said, like, it's hard now because we're in the middle of a pandemic and
right,
working from home. So my wife is here, my daughter, our dogs, like there's a lot of distractions. So it's like another level of like learning how to deal with that.
Sure.
So yeah, it's definitely a blurry line for sure.
Because do you find yourself like sometimes like you have to be like, okay, I'm done now. I'm like going to do something else because I just can't do this anymore.
Well, it's tricky now because, at Harley, like I'm getting pretty passionate about some of these projects and I have some freelance on the side and it's like, okay, I need to like really focus on this Harley stuff and work on this tonight. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily have to, but I feel like I'm going to have to start saying no to freelance more, sure, because the Harley stuff is becoming that passion work for me. So,
I mean, but that's good. That's the jackpot if you find somewhere that you love that much,
Yeah. So, yeah, to answer your question, I'm still working on that.
Still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like talking about all this freelance stuff and as well as your job, and you recently became a father too. Another thing to juggle as well. Has becoming a father like changed your creative process at all and how you think about design or what you're inspired by artistically?
Yeah, I mean, physically, like sometimes I have to strap her to my torso and work. So it's definitely like become an obstacle I have to like work around.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it just like puts out a whole new perspective for you, for me at least, like design isn't the most important thing anymore. Like my career is not the most important thing anymore. Like she is. So it's been really cool to like just look in her eyes and be like, holy crap. Like I created a life that I'm responsible for. Like this is the most important thing now.
Yeah.
When you go on as like your career is the most important thing, like for the last 10 years, it's kind of a crazy switch to turn, so definitely something that I'm grateful for sure.
Because I feel like one of the, I don't have kids, but I feel like one of the cool thing about kids is that as they grow up, you get to like re-experience the things that you did as a kid too.
Yeah.
And like get reintroduced to stuff that you forgot about for years. So is that something that you're looking forward to?
Oh man, I was talking about this with my wife, like last fall. I was like, I'm so excited to like take her to like an apple farm and like see her picking apples and like seeing her facial expressions. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be the most like special thing. I think that's going to be awesome.
Because everything is so new and cool to them. Everything is like brand new.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, my wife and I could go to an apple farm and pick apples, but it's not going to be as fun because you're not going to see like this expression on your daughter's face, like having a blast. So hopefully having a blast.
yeah. Hopefully. That's the hope for sure. With all this, was going to like MyEd what sort of pushed you over the edge, or deciding to go to MyEd what put you over the edge to like, I'm doing this for a career? Or did you have like an idea of doing it even before that?
My senior year in high school, I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, is be a graphic designer. So I would come up to Wisconsin in the summers, like between my senior year in high school and a couple of years that I was down in Florida for college. And one of the last years that I came up for the summer, met a girl who actually went to MyEd, and that kind of like re-inspired me to like, pursue MyEd and move back. Nothing against FGCU. I think they just don't have like the program that I was looking for. It seemed like I was learning everything I already knew, like from previous classes in high school, and it's kind of like teaching myself more than I was, learning in school there. So wanted to take it more seriously. And that's when I decided to jump the ship and go to MyEd.
Yeah. Cause I feel like that's a fair assessment. if you're paying for something and you're not learning as much as you want, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to jump ship for sure. Is there a specific project that you can like look at? Because you've done a lot of freelance work, working with different companies and people, that there was like a reaction that you did not expect to something that really, I guess, changed your perspective or gave you a new perspective on like why you do this as a career?
So I used to work at an ad agency here in town where I met my wife. I was working on this like brand identity and packaging design project for a snack company out of Jackson, Wisconsin called Gorilla Goods. Mm-hmm. And so this was like my first time really working on packaging, aside from like, I think we had Lakefront Brewery as a client and Angelic Bakehouse, but this was like the first time like I was able to create something from scratch for this brand. And when we sat down at the conference table to present it, man, I just got goosebumps again. Like the client just started crying, and she was just so happy that it was like her vision for what she wanted. Like she could tell that we like listened to her, and it was like so like touching to me that I was like, oh wow, like we just made a vision come to life for her. Like that's crazy. Like you don't always think that what you're doing is the most important thing in the world. So that was kind of a really cool thing to experience. So
no, I mean, that's amazing too. And to think about it from like my perspective, someone who can't really draw that well, like to have like this idea in my head, but not be able to execute it and have someone else like do exactly what I envisioned. That's a moving experience for sure.
Yeah, that was probably the one of the better moments, you know, in my career.
Like moving forward, working at Harley and then also doing freelance, what do you want to like still, I mean, because you've done so much, what do you want to still accomplish and still do in your field? Is there any specific goals that you have or like challenges you made to yourself that you want to get better at or get to a point of a certain thing?
I think I always want to keep challenging myself, and I think I'm able to do that at Harley, which is really nice. I work under a guy who kind of pushes experimentation and really pushes you to, you know, just experiment. So just always experimenting and trying new things, I think, is the challenge that I'm most intrigued about. You know, I always want to be better at typography. I think there's always room for improvement there.
I was going to ask, do you still skateboard? Like, do you still do that?
I have a skateboard. I haven't really touched it in a while.
No. Do you think you still could do like tricks and things like that?
You know, like I think it was like a year ago, 2 years ago. Wow, it's been that long. We were living in Wauwatosa, and I just went to the skate park early in the morning when nobody would be there.
Sure.
I was like, if I fall, no one's gonna see me.
Yeah.
So I was actually like, I felt like I had my muscle memory still. Like I was still able to do some of the things that I really enjoyed doing. And, you know, I love riding the mini ramp. So I actually used to have a mini ramp in my basement as a kid, and my dad built for me. So I've always felt really comfortable on the mini ramp. Yeah, my legs are a little bit jello, rusty.
Sure.
This day and age, I guess. So
is it a little bit more sketchy doing skateboarding now that you need, like, if you break your arm, you have to like draw and stuff?
You know, I think I stopped skateboarding because I didn't have insurance in college, and that's kind of, you know, the worry there.
Yeah.
But now I have insurance, so it's like, maybe I should just get out of my skateboard.
Just see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess wrapping up here, where can people find your work, contact you? Do you work with like individual people if they want like a commissioned piece or something like that?
Yeah. You can reach me at jacobsondesignshop@gmail.com. My email. I'm currently redoing my website. That's jacobsondesignshop.com. And then my Instagram handle, I think, is just at Zac Jacobson. That's about it. I mean, I have Dribble too, so you can look me up there. I don't have Facebook or Twitter or anything, so.
Yeah, you don't need them. Nothing's happening that is necessary on either of those platforms.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I really love your work, and I think you're an incredible artist. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.